What up, chat? What up, chat? What's the word? Oh shit! Oh, it's an early one today, but I had to get in. I was debating whether I was gonna do this, um, or not. But I think it's a good thing for people to talk about and people to learn the law, right? Cause I see a lot of shit going on with it. And look, I'm not even a Durk fan. Y'all know me. Bro said, "Why be better?" Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. But I did watch up on some of it yesterday, and there's a lot of ways Dirk can get out of this, and I'm gonna go over this and why I think that. Um, I watched what's his name, 1090 Jake, the other day or yesterday. I watched his. We're gonna watch Trap Lord Ross because so supposedly he's actually in the actual trial, like watching it live. So I feel like he's gonna have a little bit better information for us. So let's see. Baby. Hold on, let me make sure I got everything hooked up here. Game audio capture, Discord. Let me see.
What an insane day at the Durk trial. It was absolutely wild. It didn't play out any of the ways that people were expecting, but it was absolutely insane. I've written so many notes today. I've actually on 2 notebooks. I had 2 notebooks akimbo in the courtroom today. It was absolutely mental. I'm not going to lie to you. Absolute insanity. I'm gonna try my best to just give you all the info. You guys seem to like the kind of full breakdown that I did yesterday. I'm honestly, I'm speechless. There was so much going on. There was ups and downs for Dirk's team, for the prosecution, for the state. It was ups and downs for me. They was saying I was getting pressed outside the courthouse. I thought I was doing the pressing a couple of times. I ain't gonna lie to you. There was so much going on. It was just insanity. Okay, so I'm gonna find my page and I'm gonna let you.
Shout out to all 46. I don't know why this ain't updating right here. Oh, we got 61 people. See, that's wrong too. Hey, appreciate everybody coming in at 8:30 in the morning. I just want to, just like I just said a minute ago, I wanted to break down what I'm seeing in this trial. See, a lot of people they uneducated about the law. That's why they go up in there. They accept bad plea deals. They go to jail. This, that, and the other. If you know anything about my little bit of backstory, this was the worst thing I had to take, and that was because I had a daughter. Because you damn well should have known I was going to trial, baby. But we're not here on me. We're talking about the Dirk situation. But I'm going to show y'all how everybody was stressed out for me looking at 20 years, going to do 20 years, and I was calm and cool and collected. I'll call my lawyer right now and tell him what I said. I said I'll accept probation. Other than that, fuck you. I said from the jump, wasn't going nothing gonna be about me in that paperwork. I still got the paperwork. I showed the paperwork online. How did I know that? There's just a different levels, right?
You know absolutely
I'm gonna let
everything
y'all listen to
that
this.
went
I'm gonna be right
down
back.
in day 4. Okay, so it all started off basically, all right, with like a little bit of back and forth between the judge and Brian Steele. They basically just made it very clear. Brian Steele was kind of saying, look, once a witness takes the stand, we got to make sure that, there's not kind of weird stuff going on behind the scenes. We got to make sure that parties, are being proper about everything that goes on, that, there's not any kind of meddling with the witnesses. The judge basically said no witness can be in the court and be informed of what another witness has said. So what they're basically saying is they can't have Vonnie in the court and then let Jam know what Vonnie said or vice versa, and then he going to tighten up and correct their stories or any of that stuff. It's supposed to be completely separate. And they said if a witness leaves the stand, they shouldn't be learning what other witnesses had said. And they said, if they do leave the stand and learn what another witness has said, they shouldn't be able to return to the witness stand. They said that the defense can ask if a witness had met with prosecutors. They could request to speak to a state witness in the lunch break if they, want to try that. He said it's likely to be denied, but you can ask. They said, but what you can't do is circumvent witnesses being in court, and basically. The judge kind of basically was pushing back a couple of witnesses. Now, it wasn't said, but I think there was controversy about OTF Jam. There was all these rumors and reports, and it was said by the state themselves yesterday that OTF Jam would be given testimony today. That didn't end up happening at all. Okay. Now, what was interesting, okay, is as time kind of went on, we got back to the testimony. That lead detective was back on the stand, and he was given some very interesting details. So the last day, day 3, had ended with basically this kind of whole breakdown of the surveillance footage inside the gas station where Quando and Rondo and Lil Pab got shot at. They were inside the gas station buying snacks. We ended up seeing the shooting as it happened right after, and it ended on a dramatic note on day 3. But then we got to day 4, and we continued from there. And the detective dropped a bombshell. They said that he got phone records for nearly pretty much everyone involved in the shooting. They said it all started with OTF Jam's IG messages. He gave out his phone number in a DM. They got the cell phone number. They subpoenaed the cell site data and cell phone records for the phone. That led them to other people. Then they got Lindsay's number, and they got records. They basically got records and cell site info for everybody. One by one, they picked them off. Then they got Vonnie's info. Then they got Dee Dee's info. Then they got Jones's info. They got everyone's, and then they got Asa Houston's info. All starting with Jam was the first domino that knocked everyone off. Now, excuse the pun. We looked at a bunch of footage, basically from the Level Hotel, the Bathing Ape store, the Litco dispensary. Basically, we learned that the escape path for the Escalade. So when Quando, Rondo, and Lil Pab got shot at and they fled the gas station, they actually drove right past where OTF Vonnie was staying, about 2 blocks away. It looked like 2 blocks north, and Vonnie likely saw Quando's car speeding by, right? They showed Google Street View, and they said that, the car was basically up there 2 blocks away, and Quando ended up speeding off that way. The Infiniti, on the other hand, that did the drill, it ended up taking off in the alley, and it kind of, when there's an alley sort of in between blocks in America, there's sort of like other alleys. It kind of reminds me of like GTA Vice City or like Miami. If you're near Miami Beach, South Beach, you've got these little alleyways that go behind the blocks. They basically drove from an alley to another alley to another alley, kind of sideways off, while Quando and them darted north, and they would have driven past Vonnie, right? Did I say Vonnie? I meant Quando. Quando and them drove off north. Anyway, all right, that wasn't the most important thing. What was really interesting is we saw 4 angles, 2 angles of the shooting, 2 angles of the alleyway. They played all the footage again, straight 4K, back to back to back, side to side, all panels.
So this is the crazy part about all this, right? California is a liberal state, right? California is going to be the first state that's like Europe, right? Europe's big on them CCTV things, and it does stop a lot of crime. These guys are supposed to be so street smart and stuff, right? The thing is with me is like, first of all, you can go on the internet and damn near find out where every CCTV, flock camera, this, that, and the other, where it is, the direct location of it. You can even sometimes chime into it and see which way it's facing. These guys are supposed to be so street smart that they didn't even think to look that up. And these guys have probably spent a lot of time in California, way more time than I've spent, and I know that.
We saw absolutely everything. It was insane. They showed a random one. They showed Dee Dee had phone messages with some kind of IG baddie by the name of Black China Doll. I'm assuming that's not the real Black China, some kind of knockoff Temu Black China that he was messing with. But anyway, she had said, Dee Dee, what you doing? He said, I'm on my way to LA. She said, what's going on with LA? Dee Dee said, shit, the guys. She said, well, why didn't you take me? He said, I didn't know I was going until 2 hours before the flight. So he doing a little pillow talk, and it's kind of making him look bad, to be honest with you guys. Giving little details like that. So then we got to the In-N-Out burger restaurant footage, which is where all the shooters went right after the shooting. And this was crazy. So we did learn kind of a few interesting things. Pretty much as they're arriving to the In-N-Out, a guy that works for Lil Durk is booking all the flights for everybody to go back to Chicago. So it's like they've done the drill. The drill's been successful. Within an hour, they're booking all their flights home. Literally less than an hour, and all their flights home are booked as they're arriving.
And that's the dumb part. All right, so I know for a fact if you go anywhere, all right, so if you go anywhere in the United States or out of the states, anything like that, just for a day or just for 45 hours, your name gets flagged. And they do more research on why you be that. Now, if you're a businessman that does a lot of traveling and they see that, they usually overlook that. But if you're a normal person or if you're involved in any kind of gang activities, they're good. That's the first thing they're going to look at. Be like, well, why did you come to California for 4 hours? Bad look.
In and out. Pretty incriminating, okay? And there was excruciating back and forth today going over all of the flight records. Look, we already established, bro, them flights was booked on Durk's Amex. Someone that works for him had an authorization to use the Amex. Vonnie was look, Dirk's account, all the killers are on there. We've been known that. They showed it over and over and over again today, but it's like the point had kind of been made. We get it, okay? But they're basically saying that this guy that worked for Dirk, I'm not going to say his last name just for the sake of it, but his name is Jason, all right? Works for Dirk, booked the flights. Dirk told him, don't book no flights, no names connected to me. Dummy Jason went ahead and booked the flights and their names connected to Dirk. So anyway, all right, they all go into in and out, and this was embarrassing. All of the shooters and Dee Dee, they're all in and out, and they're all looking at their phones damn near the whole time. We saw excruciating long footage of them all on their phones. Jam's on the phone talking, all right? Everybody's looking at phones. Dee Dee puts his arm around Jam at one point and shows him something on his phone, okay? They said that the media reported the shooting immediately after it happened. They didn't say specifically what they were looking at, but it was inferred, it was likely that they were looking at the news reporting of the hit. They were probably looking at that TMZ footage of Quando screaming no. They saw Jam at the soda fountain for an extended period of time. I mean, Jam, a bigger guy, right? I know he's definitely not getting that Diet Coke. But anyway, all right, Lindsay and Dee Dee, they were looking over animated. They kind of laughing, joking, nudging each other, all right? They all talking. But what's funny is while they're talking, they're all looking around. They look shifty. I'm not going to lie to you. They look like a bunch of guys that just did a murder, okay? And I'm not saying that because of their appearances. I'm saying it because of their demeanors. They was looking over they looking at their phones, looking over their shoulder, looking out the window, looking at who's coming. Bro, they looking like someone about to come and lock them all up.
Being out in public after doing the drill. Book the flight with a Amex card that's tied back to you. You hired some dummies who don't even know how to look where the CCTVs are. Then you got these dummies at what is it, a Burger King fast food joint minutes after it happened, looking suspicious as fuck. Is that shit about old blogger real? This don't make sense to me. Let's keep going.
So Keith Jones joined them. All right, they were all kind of having conversations, constantly looking over their shoulders out the window. Lindsay hands a phone to Dee Dee to look at something on his phone. They all start looking at their phones. It starts off, no one's on phone. Slowly, they're all on phone. Slowly, there's something's going on, and they're all looking over their shoulders, looking at their phones, like probably looking at Quando screaming no. While this was going on, Durk just looked down. He stared at the screen. He honestly looked pissed that he was even in this situation. He's probably thinking, what the hell have I done hiring you lot as my hitman? This was a big mistake.
Yep.
Dirk was just looking emotionless, kind of just staring down the whole time, just like... I was looking at Dirk quite closely. So Jam looking at his phone. Jam takes a phone call. Jam's on his phone for quite an extended period of time, and it's almost like other people... kind of looking at him like, bro, what are you doing on the phone? But then you're all playing with your phones. Now, Dirk looked quite uncomfortable, to be honest. He kind of shifted in his seat. He looked quite shifty. He looked a little bit like uncomfortable, okay? So what was really interesting is while this was all going on, okay, they're all looking at their phones. This is going on for a long time. Jam shows something on his phone to Dee Dee, and I would say that Dirk's lawyers looked uncomfortable. There was a lot of moments where Dirk's lawyers looked uncomfortable. Don't get it twisted. They had some W's. There's some moments where they were absolutely on point killing shit. But at this point, they looked uncomfortable and frustrated. Now, Durk was basically just looking down, and we're seeing all this stuff. Jam showing his phone to Dee Dee. Dee Dee staring at Jam while he's on his phone talking. Jam walks away, then he walks back. Durk's like scratching his head while this is going on in the courtroom. Dee Dee honestly looked kind of pissed off in some of the footage. Jam shows his phone to Jones. Jones is on the on the phone as well. And then after all of that, they get whatever they get from In and Out, and they go back to the Escalade. Now at this point, Durk looked defeated. I see Durk doing this. He looked pissed. He looked like he'd maybe realized he'd hired the wrong hitman for this job. Brian still looked very frustrated. This went on for a really long time. And then they brought Durk's Amex records up once again and showed all the names of these people that were in and out with the same shoes from the hit on his Amex records with the flights.
So I know what originally Dirk thought, right? There's a lot of gang killings that go on in California, and a lot of them that go unsolved just because the California Police Department just don't do that good of a job, right? We see with the David and Celeste case, there was so much evidence that that dude killed that little girl, and he stayed free for a whole year just to where the media was so on the police ass to where they had to make that arrest. They had to. But the thing is with the feds, and this is what I tell everybody, you ain't got to fear nobody in the world but the feds. Because if they want you, they going to get you. They going to go to the ultimate resources that they need to get, like this Burger King footage or whatever fast food place, CCTV footage. Like they do the due diligent hours of work. That's why their conviction rate is what, 99%? The only person I've ever seen beat the feds so many times is NBA Youngboy. And I think they just had so much shit going on in different directions that they just couldn't. They couldn't pinpoint it, right? What was and what wasn't. And he's had a lot of people stay solid to him. Unlike this situation, these dudes are singing like canaries. But we're gonna continue watching a little bit more before I give my little breakdown on it.
Durk grimaced. Durk kind of went. It kind of went like that, all right, because it was bad. This was one of the moments where we swinging more towards Durk's cooked, all right, but it turned around the other way for a little bit. But right now it was the oven was getting preheated. So they showed the return flights. They said that the BMW left the In and Out, and this was interesting. They said that
In and Out.
I thought that they'd said previously that Vonnie had driven the car back to Durk's house. That's not what was said. He actually went back to Durk's house. He went right back to Durk's house afterwards, but he didn't take the car. He parked his car off on Hollywood in a random street, and you know what he did? Booked an Uber straight away on his account, straight back to Durk's house right after the hit. Genius move, Vonnie. Really, really good stuff. So in addition to that, okay, so the Uber record showed that he was dropped off at Durk's house right after. All of the people that were at the In-N-Out restaurant were then basically right after. They went straight to the San Diego airport. They were at In-N-Out at 6:09. They were at the San Diego airport at TSA by 9:30 p.m., all right? Just straight to it. No time for any extracurricular activities. Murder, In-N-Out, check your phone, go to San Diego airport. Ticket booked on the OTF card, all right? Crazy. So they said that there was immediate reporting on the shooting by TMZ. It captured the Escalade after the shooting, and this was viral at the time. They showed the TMZ footage of Quando screaming no, and Durk was looking stressed. To be honest with you, I felt Durk was looking stressed. At some point, he kind of put his head in his hand, kind of rubbed his head. He was looking a little bit defeated at that point, okay? So they played the...
Because he knows he fucked up and got the wrong people. So what they're going to have to do now... because it's going to come down to a jury, right? It comes down to a jury of 12 people. His lawyers are going to now have to convince that them dudes went and did it on their own. They were trying to make him proud. He didn't know what was going on. But the problem with him going straight back to Durk's house, I mean... he might be cooked, chat. But the thing is, the only thing that he could use is to say that them dudes is just saying that to try to put the blame on him to save themselves, right? So, like I said, I watched the 1090 Jake yesterday. He didn't give as much detail as this. I didn't know about the fast food stuff. I didn't know about dude going back to Durk's house right away. I didn't know about any of that. So my breakdown was going to be completely different than what we're hearing right now. So let's watch a little bit more.
The TMZ clip, Durk kind of fidgeted in his chair while Quando's on the screen screaming, no! He was probably thinking, laugh now, cry later. Probably he was thinking, man, I was laughing then and now I'm crying. Okay, that's probably what he was thinking. It's just the truth. Sorry, everybody that doesn't like the truth. So they basically said that TMZ reported, and they actually sent a reporter to the scene immediately. Now, Didi had messages where he sent this viral clip to other OTF members. Now, look, this was one of the dumbest things that happened in the trial that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. And Brian Steele, Andrew Findling looked fucking furious because Didi's lawyer made an absolute mess. He made an absolute giant mess and put his foot in it. And this was just embarrassing, honestly. Didi's lawyer, anytime, I'm not going to lie to you, anytime Didi or Lindsay's lawyers speak, Brian Steele and Drew Findling look like, bro, you guys are fucking blowing it for us. I don't know what sort of budget lawyers, all right, Durk has got for his co-defendants. Clearly he spent all the budget on his own lawyers, but like when the other lawyers speak, it's a mess. And you can tell Durk's lawyer's not feeling it. So basically, right, and they said this. I want to make this very clear, and this is just how bad Didi's lawyer is doing at the moment. They basically said, all right, Didi had basically sent this viral clip to a bunch of OTF members in a group chat. He sent a clip. They made it clear it wasn't his message, but the message had a caption, and it was unclear who wrote the caption at the time, but then we litigated it, all right? We heard what it was all about. It said, at Quando Rondo, where your pipe was at, gang, laughing emoji 3 times, smoke emoji 5 times, demon emoji, I believe there was like a hurricane spinning emoji, and then the word risky with a bunch of Ys. This was sent to a group chat that had TTE Wicked Man, who replied, TTE being threats to everybody, it's another crew that's associated with Durk. Oopsie, you're not allowed to talk about gangs. Showed that with laughing emojis, right? So TTE Wicked Man responded with laughing emojis. It was sent to Breezo. It was sent to Lil Vani from OTF. Didi added his own comment after he shared this post saying he playing crazy. Vani said, yeah, acting bad. And Durk scratched his head and just stared down while all of this was going on. Boona, right, his Instagram account was at Boona Dthang Brother. He said, on bro, with a mind-blown emoji. And Durk just looked down while this was going on. And then basically Booney Mo was brought up. They showed a picture of Booney Mo with Jam and Durk and Didi all together. They're in the group chat. It was pretty bad. It was more just like, bro, this is looking bad. The judge basically, we took a little break. And during the break, Durk kind of had to switch up his demeanor, just like he kind of, I ain't gonna lie, he'd be putting on a fake smile when he wants to try to kind of like look good. You know, we saw the hearings, like whenever he was brought in, he was like just smiling, laughing with his lawyers, trying to put on a good face. But it was like he's seeing all of this evidence and he was looking shook, he was looking upset, he was looking like stressed out. And then when they had the break and they let him stand up, he was kind of like switched on. He was like, yeah, like smiling, joking with his lady lawyer. It just seemed fake, to be honest. It just seemed really fake to me. The way he switched it on just seemed fake. Or maybe he was genuinely happy that that testimony had stopped. But anyway, Brian Steele got on cross-examination, and at this point, all right, this was probably the finest hour that we've seen from Brian Steele so far. That's not to say that he's not going to do a great job going forward. I am very hopeful that he is going to kill it going forward. But he cross-examined that lead detective, and I don't want to say he smoked him, but he really did make him look bad. He put some belt to ass, all right? Brian Steele said, I'm just going to do my Brian Steele voice. Said, you became a lead detective on this case on August the 30th, yes? Yes. As lead detective, you oversee all evidence, and then it gets moved to a task force. He said, yes, this was initially a state case. It became a Fed case. He said, you work with prosecutors, Fed, state law enforcement, FBI.
See, it was originally a state case. The feds was already working on him. And he should have knew that between the YB and the
Crime Lab people
the
said,
beef
yes.
the
You
beef
speak with a
alone.
lot of people, yes. They said you spoke to cooperators, including Jam. Said, yep. Were you present when Jam was interviewed 12 different times? And this is where the detective starts sweating a little bit, all right? Metaphorically speaking. He said, I don't know the exact number of times, but it was many times we met with Jam. Brian Steele said Jam was interviewed over 30 times. The guy went, possibly. Brian Steele said, Jam is in confinement. He's locked up. He said, yes. He said, do they take notes of these? Do they record meetings? And the detective said, only notes are taken. And Brian...
And see, this is where my breakdown was going. And always goes for every police case. You're always going to find that one cop that don't do his job, right? This right here, with no footage of this dude being sat with detectives 30 times, they could easily say that he was coerced to say these type of things, right? Because if you don't have true evidence, I mean, all this footage and stuff, that's just he say, she said. It's what it could be, right? Oh, they're looking at their phone, seeing the TMZ thing, and they were reacting to it. Or they could have been looking at the video of something else. Possibly. More than likely, was they looking at the TM video? Of course. But at the end of the day, with a good lawyer, it's not about what you think, it's what you can prove. This is why I always stress to people. People are like, oh man, you done spent over $200,000 on lawyers. Yep, sure have. And I'll spend another $200,000. Because you don't know how much a good lawyer will save you. And there's not many of them out here.
Said, well, Jam had 3 recorded interviews. And the detective said, I don't recall the recorded interviews. Brian Steele said, you don't know? And he said, oh, they were documented, they were documented, I think 302s is what he said. Brian Steele said, well, a summary of what law enforcement said, right? It's a summary, it's a written summary, it's not a recording. The guy was like, yes. And then he said, Keith Jones, you were present for 5 of his interviews, yes? Yes. He said, only 1 time was recorded. The guy said, possibly. He said, on October 2024, October 24th, that was after his arrest, yeah? And they said, yeah. They said, nothing prevented you from recording this, did it? They said, yep. Who decided to not record it, Brian Steele said. They said it was the U.S. Attorney's Office preference. And then they said, Vonnie, he was interviewed in your presence 10 times. Never recorded when you were there. Detective said, yep. Threw his hand. He didn't throw his hand up, but he said, yep. And they said, do you know, Brian Steele said, do you know why meeting a cooperator would not be recorded? And the detective...
And this is where the feds play dirty. Is they'll go and scare someone that's broke or you know, this how all the ratting situations happen. Well, first of all, I always told people don't deal with nobody that's broke. Why? Because if they get pulled over doing something they're not supposed to do, threatened with jail time, a high bond, they're gonna rat. People that don't understand the legal system and are scared to go into jail, they're gonna rat. It's as simple as that. So what they done, and this is probably what they. I believe this story is true, allegedly. But my opinion doesn't matter in the jury's eyes. So, but I will tell you from both sides. I'm gonna tell y'all from both sides. This don't look good. Y'all sat down with both of these defendants over 50 times collectively with no recordings. What was y'all telling them? Man, if you get up there and say what we want you to say, you're gonna get a 6-9 treatment. You're gonna get a year in jail and you're gonna be out.
said, look, I can't explain it to you. I typically record stuff. Brian Steele said, well, the recording is the best evidence, yes? They said, yes. They said, the context is important. They said, yes. They said, you could have said, they could have easily said to any of these people without recording it, right? You could have said to them, you don't get a deal if you don't give up Durk. You've got to give up. They could have pressured them, and it's not recorded. He casted all this doubt in the mind of the jury, and the detective clapped back. He said, well,
do I know the law or do I know the law?
but I would testify that didn't happen. We ain't got a recording, but you'd have to just go on my word that that's not what happened. Brian said, how do we know? The detective said, well, everything's documented by officers. Brian said, you prefer to record it? He said, yes. Brian said, now, we don't have that for most interviews. They said, basically, for Hester, Grant, and Jones, which is Jam, Vonnie, and Jones, right? So he said that they're facing serious charges, all right? And you tell them they're facing serious charges. They'll likely die in prison because there's no parole in the feds if they get convicted of these. Did you explain that to them? The detective said, well, I didn't, but maybe someone else did. And Brian said, they know that it's serious. You know, from 24 years in law enforcement, you know people like them might have a motivation to minimize their criminal conduct. All the detective said was, it's possible. It's possible. So after that, he said, well, they might implicate innocent people just to go home, right? He said it's possible. Brian said they haven't...
Where did I say at the beginning of this video where this was going? They got all this evidence. Now it's time to flip the table and say, well, these two are going to rat on him to try to get their time lesser. If there's no hard evidence against Durk, Supposedly they got a text message from him and someone from Quando Rondo's side. They tried to squash the beef, and he said some shit about, we'll take this switch off the Glock or some shit like that. But that's still hearsay, right? It looks horrible. All this looks horrible, but it's still hearsay.
An incentive to fabricate things. He said it's possible. He said, as a great detective, it's on you to repute or corroborate the evidence that's being put across. He said yes. They said, Mr. Hester, Jam hasn't testified yet. What did you do in the interview? All right. He said that Jam said that this gets controversial. He said so Brian Steele said Jam said at 6:44 a.m. he gets a call from the accomplished Durk Banks. Now that got an objection from the prosecution, and that was sustained by the judge. Said, look, you can't be characterizing the defendant that he's accomplished. He said you can cover his character later, right? You can't say you got a phone call from the great Durk Banks, the completely innocent, never would ever commit a crime in his life, Durk Banks at 6:44. Can't be saying that. It's improper, all right? So they wasn't feeling that. Brian Steele clapped back after that sort of rebuttal. He said, well, you remember that Durk said, all right? And then he said, oops. I mean, you remember that Jam said that Durk called him. He said, do you remember him telling you that he was in the car with his wife and son? That got an objection that was sustained. The judge said, move on. Stop trying to get sympathy. Oh, Jam was with his wife and son. He was with his wife and son, so he had to snitch because he got the call at 6:44 from his wife and son. He was with his wife and son. Of course he would lie. Judge wasn't feeling that. Brian Steele was having motion. The judge kind of capped that motion off at that point, and it was really the prosecution's objections. They said, did you do anything to find out if Jam's son was at school? Objection. That was sustained. They said, look, stop trying to, we're not trying to get no sympathy for him as a father, bro. His son's irrelevant to this, right? So Brian Steele had to change tact, right? This wasn't working for him. He said, okay, so look, we'll do some of these questions about the family after Jam testifies. Let me change topic. He moved over and showed the incorporation docs for Durk's LLC, Astronaut Sounds. Basically, he said, as of May 5th, 2021, Durk was made a new manager of the LLC. It was an existing LLC that was registered in January back in 2017, and it was associated with his credit card that had 4 users. They said the 4th card, they corrected what was said yesterday. They said the 4th card was for Dante Banks. It was Durk's brother, not Durk's father. And they said, where on this incorporation document is it signed by Lil Durk? It was not signed by Lil Durk. It was signed by, I guess it's a woman that kind of works with him in a business capacity. They said, can you prove that Durk even knew about this document? No. Brian Steele said, can you prove Durk ever even looked at his credit card bill once? They said, no. They said, can you show Vonnie used it? They said, well, yes, he used it under Durk's name. They said, do you know that if Jason sent the info on the cards for the flights? He said he doesn't know. They said, do you have proof that Durk knew his card was used to buy those plane tickets? But then the detective clapped back. He said, yes. He said, actually, yes, I can on that one. And they said, how? They said, well, Durk texted Jason saying, don't book no flights in my name. And then Brian Steele, he couldn't really clap back. That wasn't what he was expecting. He said, we'll come back to that. He said, you got Vonnie's phone records. They said Vonnie called Jason to discuss the flights. All right, that got an objection. The prosecution said, look, you can't prove exactly what they discussed just from the fact they got on the phone. And basically, they said, oh, do you know if Jam sent Jason Smith his info? The judge overruled. They said that evidence wasn't admitted yet. It was later admitted. But anyway, Brian said they purchased another person called William Malcolm a plane ticket, yes, but he never made it to California. So they went on and said, look, it was only Jam that spoke on the phone to him, not Durk. That was agreed to by the detective. They said Jam and Durk don't speak at all. Jam and Durk don't have any communications once between 18th of August and 20th of August when the murder's going down and the stalking's going down, okay? And the detective agreed. There's no phone records that show Durk and Jam had any type of conversation. They said, so Vonnie used that Amex to book his own flight, and that was objected to, but the judge allowed it. The detective basically said, look, I know there's flights purchased with Durk's Amex for Vonnie, and that's basically all he could say. So they then showed a few messages that were really quite interesting. It was kind of a back and forth between Durk and Jason. And this was really interesting. So it was messages that were kind of out of context, and I'm actually going to I might try and find out what some of these images were, because even there's a couple things the feds have mentioned that I'm like, I can solve that. I think they're not mentioning it because they can't prove it, not because they don't know the facts behind it, but they basically had these messages from Cellbrite It was from Durk saying he's still going to post. I'm going to just fall back off the shit. And then they went back and forth saying blood, yo. And then there was this message that was very suspicious. I think it happened after the alleged murder took place, where that guy Jason basically said to Durk, tell Jay congrats on the wedding. Never seemed to get a response. And they basically just said that they didn't know what that meant. Okay.
Yeah,
No idea what that meant. No idea about the wedding.
We're just trying to pull stuff out the air now. Like I said, at the end of the day, you gotta have facts, not assumptions.
They said, well, Durk is referring to Jason as blood in some of these messages. They're both referring to each other as blood. Okay. But it doesn't really matter. This text thread then leads to the don't book no flights in no names involved with me. And they basically say that you extrapolated in Brian Steele said, in your knowledge, Durk knew the flights were being booked, the time the flights were being booked, the messages. He's messaging the person who books the flight. And Brian Steele said, look, you believe if he told Jason this, he would have followed the request. The detective said, yeah, true, but if he already booked the flights, it was too late. Brian Steele said it's fair to say the flights were already booked for Jam before these messages, but after this, you told the jury on Friday the same Amex was used for other people. Explain how they have the position when Durk said don't do it. And the detective kind of slapped back pretty smartly. He said, well, look, I can only say at the same time that message might have been sent as the initial flights are being booked. Durk is saying don't book no flights and no names involved with me. He's saying that Jason booked the flights and I can't tell you his state of mind. And later on, he basically kind of made the point to say that, like, yeah, well, he made a mistake. Durk saying don't book no flights and no names involved with me and him doing it anyway is a mistake. It's not proof of innocence. That's kind of the argument that was later made. But anyway, they kind of went back and forth a little bit and it wasn't really that interesting. There wasn't anything kind of super. There was kind of like a bit of procedural stuff.
All right, so we'll go ahead with my breakdown because I feel like he's just going to talk about the rest that I already know about it. They just go back and forth, and I honestly think he's going to beat this. Not that I think that he's innocent. It's a lot of hearsay. Y'all just listen to where we're at. Almost 30 minutes worth of this. It's a lot of hearsay. Does the not booking plane tickets, does that look suspicious? Yeah, that's suspicious. Does the CCTV look suspicious? Yeah, it looks suspicious, but that's not hardcore proof, right? Was dude going back to Dirk's house in the Uber look suspicious? Yes, of course, but it's not hardcore proof. You have to have proof beyond doubt when you go to trial. Now, to go to jail, you're guilty till you're proven innocent. They'll take you to jail with barely any, with just assumptions nowadays. They will. They ready for that bond money. Any place you go to, they just ready for that bond money. Um, but as far as what I've been keeping up on and just seeing, it's just like they're just going tick for tat, and Durk is using the thing that I said at the beginning of the video, and he's done explain now too as well, is that he's going to go for y'all coerce these people to say this stuff about me, this, that, and the other. Where's the proof? And taking that tactic is probably the worst thing the police could have ever done was not do them interviews videoed, because the jury, American people aren't dumb no more. They're not as gullible as say the 1990s. But you had to have proof back then to really go to jail. They didn't just take you on assumptions. So 9 out of 10 times the people that got arrested in 1990, they was guilty and they did their job properly, this, that, and the other. Now you would think nowadays with the more CCTV, the more electronics we got, this, that, and the other, that these people would have better evidence than the 1990s, but they don't, and they use small things from these new devices that we have to try to make assumptions. And nowadays people don't like assumptions. Normal people don't like assumptions. We want cold hard facts. We don't want nobody to go to jail for life that don't need to be there. Doesn't matter what I think opinion wise of the person. There has to be cold hard facts. Now, do innocent people go to jail all the time? Yes, but with a good lawyer, no. and that's what he's got. Brian Steele. Now it's still gonna be hard for him because of just the OTF label and how they was when they was younger, this, that, and the other. Like I said, do I think he did it? Allegedly, yes. I know how that street shit goes. Um, just from that text alone, don't put the plane tickets in my mouth. You're guilty to me. But that's not hardcore evidence. A jury can't think like that. Like, oh, just because I think he did it, he did it. It's not gonna go like that. And then they'll either have a mistrial or he'll go not guilty. And I think honestly a mistrial is gonna happen. Now if the feds double back and try to come back again, like they're doing the YNW Melly, like that poor guy right there, he been in jail for 8, 9 years going to trial. Are they gonna double back and do the same thing to him and just to keep him in jail? They can. They can. The best thing for him is to get out and move to another country. That's that's literally what it is. Because they're just trying to make examples out of these guys, right? They try to do it to Young Boy. They're trying to do it to Durk. They try to do it to Rollo. Uh, they try to do it to YF and Lucci. They try to, don't get me wrong, Pooh Shiesty, he deserved to be in jail. I fuck with Pooh Shiesty, but let's keep it G. He's out his top. So I'm gonna keep updating. Probably every 2 days we'll do a video like this, and I'll keep breaking it down. But yeah, I see where this is going. This is going to a straight to a mistrial. It's going straight to a mistrial. He'll lose all that money. He might not have no money left after all this, but and that's might be their end goal too. We're like, oh well, if we can't throw him in jail, at least he'll be broke. He can't do nothing else. Now, when he be broke, I don't know how that rap money shit work. You know, he might own businesses somewhere that's making money while he's in jail. Who knows? I don't know. But I just see a mistrial, and y'all hearing it first. I see 8/27, August 27th. I just see a mistrial. This is gonna go on for months. This is gonna go on for months. But y'all hearing it first. Y'all be cool, man. Peace.